everybody. My name is Rebecca Scroggy. I am a registered nurse and an IBCLC, but probably most importantly, I am a mom to two kids. I am so beyond thrilled to be here with you and share some amazing superstar interviews. Welcome, Jordan, to Chillin' with Ceres Chill. I am so excited to have you here chatting with us, and I am just so pumped about that awesome, cute little closet you have behind you. So much better than my blank wall. But so I would love if you could take a second just to introduce yourself and share how you came to doing baby wearing as an occupational therapist and your background and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, my name is Jordan. I'm an occupational therapist and certified baby wearing consultant. I had an introduction to baby wearing when I was working with younger families while I was a rehab tech in grad school. And then, kind of had it in the back of my mind when I became a mom, okay, I want to do that. That's so incredible. And then my son we had a really difficult birth and he had an unexpected NICU stay. And I ended up having a lot of really, really bad, really intense postpartum anxiety, especially about his respiratory status when he was sleeping. And then after his NICU stay, he didn't really want to sleep unless he was touching someone. And so baby wearing really became like a lifeline for me. And I started out as a general maternal health practitioner, and then after just my experience with my son, was like, okay, well, I need more training and more information about this because this is really what I want to do. And I know the OT side of it. I know the positioning for the parents and the babies, but I don't know the gear well enough. And so I pursued my certification through the Center for Baby Wearing Studies and just started an Instagram to kind of test the waters to be I love this. My local community loves this, but is this something people might be interested in? And it just took off. And so now it's been about 2 years at this point, and I have clients all over the world, and it's my full-time job, and absolutely love what I do. And I've had the privilege to be a part of a lot of really impactful and special moments in people's postpartum lives. So just really incredible. I feel like I absolutely found my calling.
So much for you. Baby wore with both my kids, and that was
Yeah.
I loved it so much. My oldest is 6, and so, 6 years
Yeah.
ago, the game was very different
Yes.
than it is today. So I'm so glad that you can be here, and I honestly want to take a screenshot of your closet so I can show my
Yeah.
husband when he was like, "You have too many carriers." And I'll be like, "Look,
Yeah.
Jordan has all
Yeah.
of these." Hmm.
Have, yeah, I think last time I counted, because we're in the process of moving, and last time I counted, because I had to count for the insurance for the movers, I want to say I had right under 100 in my collection, and I've gotten a few more in the mail in the months since I've done that. So we're probably right at 100 carriers altogether.
That's
And a handful of
amazing.
demo dolls and all that good
Yeah,
stuff.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you kind of talked about this a little bit with your story of your son being in the NICU and
Yeah.
the benefits of baby wearing.
Mhm.
What are the developmental benefits from an OT perspective of
Mhm.
growth and things like that? Is there any benefits in baby wearing for
Yes,
that?
yes, absolutely. There are so many benefits. And I think one of the first things that I love to educate parents on is the fact that baby wearing does not count as container time because you're not passively fixing them in one position the same way you might be in a car seat or a bouncer or, other solid containers where baby doesn't have the same freedom of movement. We are using the carrier to keep them on our bodies, but there's a lot more room for dynamic movement. There's a lot of opportunity for them to work on kind of modified tummy time, because when they have tummy time on the floor, they're working a different plane of gravity than when they have tummy time in an upright position. So it's just working slightly different muscles in slightly different ways. And it's just can be a really nice addition to their motor milestones. And I often see a lot of babies who don't tolerate traditional tummy time on the floor tolerate baby wearing a lot better. And so it can kind of be a way to help them catch up and work through their developmental milestones while we get to the root cause of why they're not tolerating tummy time on the floor. So we have that motor milestone benefit. We've got a language benefit where babies are up here, right? Like right in our space. And so we're more likely to talk to them and directly interact with them. And in that early days where their vision is limited, they can see our face. Like they're right in the field of view to clearly see our face. And so, they're kind of getting an idea of like what facial expressions look like and what our mouth looks like when it makes different sounds and shapes. And the other fun language benefit is then they're also in between any conversations that adults have or like adults and other
Yeah.
kids, and so they get that ebb and flow of language and like that reciprocal like language and social development start to kind of really like click for them because they're in it instead of being off to the side and not getting the same level of detail that they would get when they're in a carrier. And then, you've got I mean, I could go on and on. There's
I
so many
know,
good
I know.
benefits, but like, at its core, like with the regulation, the fact that we know that babies regulate and actually will match the adult's vital signs. So, like we have to be regulated and we have to be in a state where we can be calm and learn before we can work on skills. And so a lot of times these babies that are dysregulated from like tension or reflux or just like developmental issues, congenital issues, that regulatory state that baby wearing can help achieve opens up room in their mind for them to be able to like work on other skills. So it's just like incredible, all of the amazing benefits for baby from like a developmental, from an emotional, from a social
Yeah.
standpoint, from a like a breastfeeding
Mhm.
standpoint. There's so many great benefits for the breastfeeding parent and for the baby as well when it comes to baby wearing. So it's just like
It's
you could
so
probably write a
cool.
book on just
How does that impact that sensory regulation? Because I know there's a lot of different aspects to that.
yeah. Yeah, so obviously it's going to depend on like each individual baby and like what their sensory needs and what their sensory preferences are. But baby wearing can be a really sensory rich environment. For one, you've got the proprioceptive input, right? Of like the parent's body on the front and the carrier on the back. So you get kind of that deep pressure, that like consistent deep pressure that can be really regulating for like our vagus nerve and our nervous system. You've got more vestibular and proprioceptive input from like the parent moving and kind of like changing positions and bending and twisting and all of, those different positions that you wouldn't necessarily get if you were down on the floor when you're not a mobile baby yet. You hear the parent's voice, you hear their heartbeat, you smell them, right? Like,
Yeah.
especially if it's like the breastfeeding parent and the babies can smell the milk when they're on there. And
Yeah.
so you've got like
Yeah.
all of that, just like all around, just like such a calming environment with
Yeah.
the heartbeat, the breathing, the parent's voice, like, and also
Yeah.
it's a safe place to explore the rest of the world, like
Yeah.
things that might be overwhelming if you just plopped baby out in like the middle of Target, like that's really scary and overwhelming.
I mean, honestly, same.
But when they're on like their parent's chest and they can turn their face in and they can choose how much they take in, but also they have that like warmth and pressure and like calm from the adult, it gives them the ability to like explore things and be more open to like sensory environments that might be a little more challenging or a little more stressful if they were not attached to their caregiver.
I've seen this huge influx in probably the last like 5-ish years of a forward
Yeah.
facing carrier. And I've heard really mixed things about whether or
Hmm.
not that is okay. I know one of the scary things for those of us who have some experience or knowledge about baby wearing is that
Hmm.
there's a potential of you actually having a baby in the wrong position. So, how can caregivers make sure that they're using it correctly so that way babies have like the optimal hip and spine
Yeah.
positioning?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely wouldn't say it's not okay. Like it's not optimal, right? Like as an OT and someone who's focused on kind of like that best practice, I always let parents know like we can absolutely do this as optimally as possible, but it's not the best position for your body or for baby's body. But some things you would want to be mindful of is one, your baby needs to meet certain milestones. Typically, what we're looking for is that they're at least tripod sitting, which means if you plop them on the ground, they're using one or both hands for balance. They're not falling over, folding forward, floppy. Typically, that happens around 4.5 to 6 months for most babies. So, like a 2 month old is not ready for world facing. It has to do with their core muscles, their ability to protect their airway, and just their overall like level of stability when you're like moving around, their ability to like right themselves, against
Yeah.
gravity and against movement. So sometimes I get parents that are like, well, they have good neck control. I'm like, it's not just about the neck. Like they need more than that. So we want to make sure they're tripod sitting and we want to make sure they're tall enough to clear the panel, right? Even if your kid is
Yeah.
tripod sitting, if they're small and you put them in the carrier and the carrier is coming up to their nose, that's really unsafe. And I do see that sometimes, like small babies who are like sunk down into the carrier. So those are the two things I tell parents. And then pick a carrier that provides the same level of support or as close to it as possible as inward facing. So you're looking for one that is snug on their sides so they can't slump sideways. And then you're looking for a deep, wide seat, right? So, like some examples of ones that offer more ideal seats would be like the Ergo Baby, the Omni, and then the Tula Explorer. They have the ability to narrow the middle of the panel but widen the seat out so you still get that full like thigh support and you can kind of achieve that like outward pelvic tuck. It's not quite as
Yeah.
nice as inward, but it's
Yeah.
better than some of the like really soft, loose, minimalistic
Yeah.
body carriers where you put baby and it's just kind of baggy and roomy and like you get them in the seat and they just kind of slip back out of it and then their legs are dangling or weird. So you have to be like really picky about choosing a carrier that actually supports the baby because when they're facing in, they have the support of your body on the front like, all the way up to their head, all the way down to their
Mhm.
feet, and then they've got the carrier on their back, but when they're facing out, that carrier stops, ideally,
Yeah.
like, top of the shoulder, and so then they don't have anything to lean forward into, and so the carrier
Yeah.
needs to be more structured. And then we have all the safety concerns, right? Like, don't let them sleep in forward facing because they can go chin to chest. And then just watch them for overstimulation. I get people who parrot the like they need to turn around in 15 minutes rule. I don't necessarily believe that. I think every baby is different. Some babies are going to be totally overstimulated the second you put them in world facing, and they're not going to tolerate 15 minutes. Some babies are going to like it, and while they're awake and alert, they're going to tolerate 20, 30, 40 minutes. So, I mean, it just
Yeah.
depends on your baby's personal preferences and their like preferred level of sensory stimulation, but you also have to watch out for the parent's body because when baby is facing out, their center of gravity is pulling down and away versus when they're facing in, they're leaning in towards you. And so it's affecting your balance and it's affecting the strain on your muscles differently. And so, especially like people who are like freshly postpartum, they're like, it hurts. I'm like, well, don't do it if it
Yeah.
hurts. It does hurt
Yeah.
because it's harder on your body. And if you have ongoing pelvic floor issues and you're adding extra strain, pulling down and away and out, that is going to hurt. So I
Yeah.
think, some of the carrier companies, I feel like they market world facing as like a progression, like a milestone, right? You face them in, you world face them, then you back carry them. And that's not
Yeah.
necessarily true. You can skip world facing if your baby doesn't like it, if it doesn't feel good on your body because your body matters just as much as your baby's body, you can skip it, right?
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
alternatives, there are hip carries, there are back carries, there are other things that you can do if world facing doesn't work for you and your family. And if it is something that works, just make sure that you're following the safety guidelines.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So if you are forward facing,
Mhm.
what should caregivers look at in a carrier? Because I know you talked about the Tula Explorer and the Ergo Baby. If you're looking for one that baby's looking at you,
The
or
one forward carrying. Yeah. Okay.
forward
Um,
carrying.
yeah. So it depends on the carrier type,
Okay.
right? But like if we're looking, let's take buckle carriers as our example because I feel like a lot of people are drawn to buckle carriers because they look quick and easy. They look simple. And so people are like, buckle carriers are very popular here in the States, at least. Other parts of the world like other things more. But here in the States, I feel like buckle carriers are the most popular. So what you're looking for is a few things. You want baby to be well supported, right? Baby's highest level of support comes from your body, but we still want to make sure that the carrier fits them well. And so we're looking for a few things. We're looking for a panel that adjusts in width and in height appropriately. So width should be knee to knee, not past. So if you have your baby in the carrier, a carrier should be supporting them all the way to the bend of their knees, and they should be able to freely swing their knees. Their knees should not be dangling, but they also shouldn't be forced to have their legs straight. Sometimes I see that with small babies. They put them in there and they're like stuck with
Yeah.
extended legs. And then we want the height of that panel to be adjustable so that it hits baby somewhere between the top of the shoulder and the bottom of the earlobe, kind of that nape of the neck level. We don't want it higher than that because that can start to be like a positional asphyxiation risk where baby's airway is obscured, they're getting less access to clean, fresh air, and they could be like pushed down into like a chin tuck position. And then when babies are small, we don't want it lower than that because they need that like upper back and kind of neck support. Once they're around 3.5 to 4 months and they start moving their arms out, we would want the panel to come up to armpit level, right under the armpit. But so we need something with an adjustable panel height that's going to meet our baby's needs. Then we also need a carrier that's going to be appropriately snug. Not overly tight to the point that you feel smushed or you feel like
Yeah.
baby's pancake to you. That's not safer. Like tighter is not automatically safer, but it needs to be snug enough that baby's not pulling down in a way, they're not slumping down into the carrier, and they're not falling sideways or slipping out. So you want something that feels like I always tell people like a good pair of pants. You know, your favorite pair of jeans where like they
Mhm.
hug you just right. They're not too tight, but they're not like baggy and falling down and you're not picking at them all the time.
Yeah.
That's what you want your carrier to feel like. You want it to feel snug and supportive. You want to feel like you're comfortable. You want to feel like baby's comfortable. Like you will know when you get that right carrier fit because you'll go, yeah,
That feels
yeah, that
comfortable.
feels
Yeah.
good. Baby and I are
Yeah.
moving as one person. Like that's how it should be. Yeah.
What do you walk through your clients when you're trying to figure out what kind of carrier would work best for them?
Yeah. So when clients come to me, there's an intake form that they fill out ahead of time. I'm asking them about baby's size and developmental stage, if baby has any history of like developmental or medical concerns, NICU stays, anything like that. I want to know about the parents that are wearing the baby, like mom, dad, grandparents, whoever it is, like any chronic health concerns, any fresh postpartum health concerns, did they have a C-section? Was there like a difficult birth? Things like that. I want to know their size, like approximate height, approximate shirt size, just because different carriers work for different bodies. I ask them if they have any like outstanding features they would describe about themselves: broad shoulders, short torso, big chest, anything like that that might affect what I recommend. We look at budget. We look at what part of the world they live in. What's the climate like there? What are their goals for carrying? What's their lifestyle like? Are they wearing around the house? Are they wearing out? Is it a mix of both? Do they have other kids where like they want something quicker or they want something that would work for a baby and a toddler? We're just like really digging into like their lifestyle and their preferences. And then if they already have any carriers already and like are they
Yeah.
struggling with them or do they like them? How do they feel about them? Like, do they have any ethical preferences with like manufacturing processes, fibers, things like that matter to people. Like some people are really picky about the ethics of the companies they're buying
Yeah.
from. So that kind of stuff matters as well. And then we hop on the call and it can be a lot of different things. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's troubleshooting carriers they already have and they're not interested in like any recommendations. Sometimes the entire call is focused on finding the perfect carrier for them. Sometimes it's a mix of both. Sometimes they're comfortable with their carriers, but we're working on advanced skills, like we're learning to feed in a carrier where, they're comfortable with a front carry, but then they want to learn how to back carry, or they have a woven wrap and they've done the basic like front wrap cross carry, but now they want to do more like multi-pass, multi-layer type
Yep.
carries. So it's like the appointments are really just a customized experience to like what the families need.
Do you have some that you feel like you're suggesting the most that are like the most popular for certain things? Like if they're interested in a stretchy wrap, do you
Mhm.
prefer that? Like, or how do you kind of, I don't know,
Yeah.
choose basically?
I don't think I have any that I really recommend more often just because families, like every family is so
Yeah.
different. But I
Yeah.
definitely would say across the board, I'm very concerned about like quality and durability of the carriers
Mm,
I'm
yes.
recommending.
Yeah.
And, also keeping in mind like the milestones of where their babies are at.
I really actually love that because, and I like that you said of like the durability and stuff like that because
Yeah.
baby carriers are not cheap. And
No, they're
like
not.
if you're investing that much money in
Yes.
something, especially something that is literally holding your child, like
Yes.
that's a big deal to have that
Yeah,
durability.
I want to make sure anything I'm recommending has passed safety testing, but I also want to make sure I've had my hands on it so that I can see, like, okay, this says recommended for 7 pounds, but is this actually safe for a 7 pound baby? Is this, a lot of them go up to 45 pounds. And I'm looking at my 30-pound toddler and I'm like, he's not fitting in these at
Yeah.
45 pounds. There's absolutely no way. I'm make sure that I'm telling families that, like, hey, I know that, like, this carrier says 7 to 45 pounds. In my experience, it's really 10 to 30 pounds, or it's when your
Yeah.
child is in, 3-month clothing until they're about in 2T clothing.
Is there safety tips that people should know about when they're picking a carrier and when they're using one?
I mean, in general, I would stay away from, like, the Amazon no-name brands. Like,
True that on everything.
if it's only on Amazon, you can't find it anywhere else. It doesn't seem like it has a legitimate website. You can't find very clear information on, like, safety guidelines from the manufacturer, or, like, if their pictures are atrocious and it's very clear that the manufacturer doesn't have a good understanding of what safety and positioning look like in the carrier, I would not buy that carrier. You
Fair.
know?
Honestly,
If they're not
fair.
concerned about protecting babies' airways, if they're not concerned about protecting their spine and their hips, if the parents look uncomfortable and you can tell they didn't think at all about the user experience for the adult, like, I wouldn't buy that carrier.
When you're investing this much money into
Right.
something, it needs to be safe and you need to know that
Yeah.
it's going to be safe. And so this is a little bit outside of the flow of it.
We can go on a tangent, that's
Yeah,
fine.
girl, like listen, this is my life, okay? ADHD is strong. Do you have any thoughts or feelings on using secondhand carriers?
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, if the carrier was stored properly and, like, taken care of, secondhand's a great option. I would be checking the integrity of the carrier. If you're buying it online, I would be asking for pictures of, like, buckles, rings, fabric. I would want to see a flat lay. I would want to be informed of, like, any loose threads, anything like that. I'd be checking the webbing when I get it, even if, like, the seller doesn't disclose something, I would still fine tooth comb, go over, like, is the padding intact? Are the straps solid? Are there any rips, tears? Is the webbing, does it feel crunchy, like it's got dry rot? Are the buckles okay? Do they have all their teeth? If it's a ring sling, like, is there any, like, scary cracks or scuffing on the rings that you might want to keep in mind? Are there any tears? Secondhand is a great option. A lot of these carriers hold up well, and some of the carriers are better secondhand, in my opinion. Like woven wraps and ring slings, when they've been broken in by someone else and they're, like, soft and moldable and super easy to use. Like, I prefer secondhand wraps over, like, crunchy loom state brand new
Yeah.
wraps, honestly.
Yeah, I did that with almost all of mine were bought secondhand. So you said something about advanced skills, which I loved that, and I felt,
Yeah.
like, so proud of myself because I was like, "Oh, yeah, I've done those things." So I was like, "Look
Yeah.
at me go."
Yeah.
But if somebody is, an exclusive pumper or they're
Yeah.
breastfeeding, how do they feed in a carrier?
Yeah, I mean, so it's going to depend on carrier type, obviously, like the specifics, the logistics of it, but general best practice recommendation across carrier type right now is to do more of, like, an upright koala feed position. So kind of whatever carrier you're using, you're going to make adjustments that allow it to be safely loosened and lowered so that baby still has, like, clear airways. We're not going to sink them down into the carrier, like the whole carrier and the whole baby are going down together. But we're loosening, we're lowering, and then we're keeping a hand on baby the entire time they're in that loose and low position. You need to keep a hand on them, one, for safety, because they're not being fully supported by the carrier or your body when they're a little bit lower, but two, because it keeps you aware and it keeps you engaged and it lessens the chance that you're going to just zone out and stop paying attention to them, because it happens. So loosening, lowering, keeping a hand on baby, paying attention to their latch, making sure that their latch is, like, an established skill, that you feel comfortable using the carrier kind of separately before you put them together. And then once baby's done actively latching and drinking, like if they start to get sleepy, they start to pop off, we want to just unlatch and raise them back up and re-tighten them back into that high and tight position, get them snug, get them safe again. And then it can go back to being a hands-free experience. We would never want babies to sleep in the loose and low position. And that can be
Yeah.
hard if you have a kid who like feeds to sleep and then wants to stay latched, but you just have to figure out other accommodations to keep them
Yeah.
safe. So,
What about if they're pumping? How do you, like, do
yeah.
that?
So I have found a lot of parents have success with like a wearable pump for one. Like
Mhm.
obviously the ones that have like the giant like flanges
Yeah.
and the containers sticking off are going to be really hard to fit inside a carrier. But I have seen parents who have been able to do a wearable pump like on one side with like a ring sling or a
Mhm.
wrap or like depending on how low profile they are, sometimes certain buckle carriers accommodate them really well. Or if you have the option to back carry, that frees up the world for any kind of pumping, right? Like you could do hands-free or you could do like attached for
Yeah.
um if your baby's in a back carry, and there are options that allow parents to back carry before baby's sitting independently.
I
And
was
so if
just about
that's
to
like
ask
like
that.
if you were
Oh,
an
same
exclusive
brainwave.
pumper and you like
Yeah.
needed baby on your back at 2, 3, 4 months old, there are options for that with support. That's generally one that I recommend people find like a local baby wearing group, a lending library, an educator, a consultant to like help them with that skill because that is one where anybody can do it with support, but you just need to know what you're doing, right? When baby
Yeah.
doesn't have head and neck control yet. So
Yeah.
I have had consultations where I have put 2 and 3 month old babies on parents' back. I had a mom who she worked with pottery for a living and she needed to get back to being able to throw. She couldn't throw clay with baby on the front. So we put baby on her back at I think 2.5 months old and she was able to go back to work and create and
That's so
but
cool.
me being there and being hands-on and, like,
Yeah.
having that, like, visual support while she got used to, like, what it felt like to have baby on her back was really, really key for just keeping them both safe.
Are there any common mistakes or safety tips that you have noticed that you wish parents knew about?
Yeah, so in general, I find that new parents tend to kind of go to the extremes with their carriers, right? Like they're either over tightening and like pancaking baby to them because they're like, I need to keep them safe. And then we've
Yeah.
got a baby who's like stuck with like an extended spine and is like uncomfortable and fussing in the carrier. And the parents are like, I feel like I can't breathe because the waistband is so tight. Like that's not a pleasant experience. Like snug is important, overly tight is not helping anyone. So I see a lot of that. And then in the flip side, I see a lot of people who are wearing baby too loose and too low, right? Like I see a lot of parents who struggle with like waistband placement and kind of figuring out how high baby needs to be on their body. And so I always tell parents, like you hear close enough to kiss, and some people struggle with that because they're like, well, if I crane my head down, like I can still kiss them. But they should be close enough to kiss without straining, right? You shouldn't have to like be like trying to break your neck and like feeling the tension in your
Lean over.
shoulders trying
Yeah.
to bend
Yeah.
forward to kiss them. And if you're having a hard time visualizing that, a great mile marker is the top of baby's head right under that dip in between your collarbones. If baby's head is resting right about there, they're not so high up that they're in your neck and you are,
Yeah.
having a hard time seeing, but that kind of basically ensures that like their head is resting on that firm flat spot and we're creating that like firm flat sleep space for them.
The way you just did that, just like lit a light bulb. And I'm like, that makes so much sense. What if you have a mom that has bigger breast?
Mhm.
Like, how does that work with picking a baby carrier? Or if you have somebody
Yeah.
who might have like a longer torso. So I
Yeah.
guess specific body types in that way. I know there have been moms that I've talked to that have larger breasts and they're
Yeah.
worried about how to basically position the carrier and
Yeah.
baby without baby like being
Yeah.
suffocated by boob.
Yeah. So I am gonna drop like a recommendation to someone who's not
Okay.
me. Just like if there's people listening with large chests, there is a colleague of mine. Their name is Jace, Jace, the rapper, and they
Mm-hmm.
have very, very large chests. And they've done a lot of great job of like showing a lot of really specific demonstrations of like what does that look like if your breast is so large that baby's kind of laying almost on top of
Yeah.
your breasts. So that's a really great resource.
Cool.
Um,
Okay.
but the thing that I would say is you wanna pick a carrier that's gonna be more customizable. So, like, a lot of buckle carriers, we're gonna have to really be picky about like waistband type, shoulder type, kind of playing around with the fit. If you are open to something with more customization, like a med-eye or a ring sling or a wrap, a lot of times for people with larger chests, they can have a lot more luck just because there's a lot more flexibility with like positioning and kind of sizing. I would recommend, there are so many great people in the baby wearing space, like on Instagram and on social media. I would just try to find, like, look up baby wearing on,
Yeah.
Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and try to find someone with your body type, or like go to a meeting in person and try to find someone with your body type or someone who has worked with a diverse range of body types and can like
Mhm.
help you understand what positioning and fit looks like for your specific body type, because there's so many carrier choices. There will be one that works for you. I do not believe that there is a certain body type that cannot baby wear. I just don't believe that. I've seen people who say I
Yeah.
can't baby wear. It doesn't work. My body just prohibits me from baby wearing. And like if that's a choice you want to make, that's fine. But if you're someone who wants to baby wear and feels like you can't, you can. There
Yeah.
are hundreds of carrier choices, and there is one out there that will let you baby wear comfortably and will keep your baby safe. I guarantee it.
Do you think having that baby wearing community, whether it's online or in
Yeah,
person, is important to
yeah.
baby wearing?
Absolutely. I mean, so here's the thing, right? In other parts of the world where like baby wearing is just a cultural norm for them and they grow up around it, they don't have to go through like this extensive like safety checklist, or like they don't struggle with like using their carriers as much because they see it their entire lives, right? It's just like an innate part of their parenting journey. They grow up watching their siblings being worn. They, maybe they're wearing their cousins or their nieces or
Yeah.
their nephews from a very early age. And so like they have this advantage of that like village style like community learning where it's just ingrained.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, we don't have that right now in the US. I think we're working back towards it. We were making a lot of progress and then COVID happened and kind of like killed a lot of the like steam for local meetups,
Yes.
but those are starting back
Yeah.
up again. And so I think like having just like as many examples as you can of like positive, safe, like baby wearing or parenting in general. But like
Yeah.
since we're on the topic of baby wearing, like, yes, having, it doesn't, you don't need to follow 20 accounts, but maybe you find one or two that you love that makes sense to you. Their information clicks, the way they're teaching clicks, they're talking about things that are easy for you to digest. And then, maybe make some friends online or in person, that also love baby wearing, and you guys can share carriers with each other and experiment and like just
Yes.
kind of support each other. The more access we have and the more positive experiences we have around like parenting things in general, the more we're going to move back to this like village community learning, which is how parenting was supposed to be. We've just lost it for a
Yeah.
couple generations. There are
Be in
people
person.
who just
Yeah.
can't, like, maybe their babies have immune issues and they
Yeah.
can't go to local play groups. Maybe they just don't have the capacity mentally to do so. And like having the internet can be a really, really powerful tool as long as you're finding examples that are good.
Do you have any resources that you specifically recommend? So, like, maybe your own I know you have an Instagram,
I do.
um,
Yeah.
like, any other resources like that you would recommend for people to find these resources?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so the great thing about the search function on these accounts like Instagram and TikTok is like you can find people with baby wearing in their name. So I would start there. A lot of the accounts that I love, a lot of my colleagues, we have baby wearing educator, baby wearing consultant, baby wearing in
Yeah.
our name. We're very searchable, we're very easy to find. It's not just someone who like has baby wearing as a hobby on the side. This is what our account is focused on. Information. I'm at the babywearing.ot. So I'm on all of the platforms like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok with like the same handle across the board, the baby wearing
Love
OT.
it.
Like just find me there. There are some brands that are putting out really excellent information as well. Heritage Baby Designs is one that comes to mind. She has some incredible like information, like evidence-based information about baby wearing on her account. Carrying Matters is, I believe, a UK-based account, but she's a family doctor and a baby wearing consultant. And
That's
so
so
like
cool.
she's got a lot of great information. Hope and Plum is an American company that is like
Mhm.
very like
Love
very,
them.
very strict on safety standards. And so like
Yeah.
some of their content's a little spicy, a little sassy,
Yep.
but like if you need safety information, they are like going to give
Mhm.
you the same information every single time. You're never going to have to wonder like how to use their carriers properly, and that can translate over into other people's carriers as well. There's all these like great accounts. Your Baby Wearing Bestie is a good one. Jace the Rapper, like I mentioned. There's a bunch of people. Sarah
Yeah.
Mari Baby Wearings in Australia. I mean, they're everywhere. Like, I would just start by looking for people who have like baby wearing consultant, baby wearing
In
educator,
there.
like in their
Yeah.
name, and just kind of go
Yeah.
from there. I know the Center for Baby Wearing Studies is working on a consultant locator. Now, they only obviously are promoting consultants who went through their school. So keep that in mind. But that was the program I went through, and it was very rigorous. So, I mean, it is a good quality program. So you could use their consultant locator. A lot of times you can Google like Asheville Baby Wearing, Columbus Baby Wearing, and if there's like a local nonprofit group or an organization in place, they will pop up on the internet. Sometimes it can be kind of hard to figure out if they're still active or not, but a lot of them have, contact info where you can reach out and hopefully you hear something back, or you can just ask educators like me, right? Like I offer virtual services worldwide, but if someone wants that in-person service, and I know of someone in their area, I'm
Mhm.
more than happy to be like, yes, there's a group in your area. Go here. Here's their social
Yeah.
media. Here's their website. Like, go for it. There are so many people out there that need help with baby wearing. We're never going to be able to help everyone, right? Like, there's room at
Yes.
the table for like thousands of educators.
I have a couple of like equity questions. There is a lot of cultural roots when it
Yeah.
comes to baby wearing.
Yeah.
Especially like you were talking about and I'm probably going to say it wrong because I've only read it. I've never actually
Hmm.
heard it, is the Mai dies, May,
Meh, die.
Meh
Meh, die.
dies.
Yes. There you go. You
Um,
got it.
so like those I've heard of, like, just how can we be more inclusive
Yeah.
of being like honoring of these cultures,
Yeah.
and being respectful while also, matching that modern parenting, being online, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I will say Carla runs the Baby Wearing Club on Instagram, and she has a whole highlight on cultural sensitivity and the roots of baby wearing. So that's a really great place to go if you just want quick info bites on, kind
Yeah.
of what you need to know. Also, just like paying attention to voices in the space who come from these cultures, right? Like if I have questions about traditional Japanese or Chinese or Asian style baby wearing, I go ask my consultant friends who live in those countries
Yeah.
and like grew up in that tradition. Like if I have questions about like the like traditional African back carrying. My friend Boosie from Babu Babies, she grew up in Zimbabwe and now she's an OT who lives in Canada and designs baby carriers. She is like the coolest person, but she has like an insane wealth of knowledge about like traditional African baby wearing and like backing, like from an early age and things like that. You can talk to people who work with rebozos and like make rebozos down in Mexico if you're, interested in like more of the indigenous practices in like Central and South America. There are people in this space who have been like doing this for a long time and, grow up in all of these different cultures. And so I can share information that I learned from them. But honestly, if people really want like that in-depth, like true level of knowledge, rather than me just parroting what I've learned from them, which is still valuable and can help people on an introductory level, but like just like again, inviting more people to the table and like listening to all the different perspectives and just getting it kind of firsthand is the way to go. And the internet lets us do that so easily.
I just think that's so cool. Another reason why I think the internet is just can be a really
Yeah.
cool place in that aspect. It's really amazing how we're having, accessibility when it comes to parenting. How can you do that for baby wearing? Say if you have like a physical limitation of maybe a limb difference or in a
Yeah.
wheelchair or something like that.
I've had a couple clients who are wheelchair users. I've had clients who have limb differences. I'm actually working with Adaptive Parent Project to become like their like baby wearing educator on staff. And they like just help parents with adaptive parenting needs. And then there's another group through the Looking Glass out in Berkeley, California, and they work with adaptive parenting in general. But like I've been working with them, going to hopefully be partnering with them soon on some projects about baby wearing specifically for like adaptive parenting. But, I think the biggest thing is like ask the people who have been there and then
Yeah.
also find educators who are knowledgeable in that area. There are certain
Yeah.
educators like, myself, I'm an OT. There are educators who have pursued like specialized training or mentorship. So like ask the baby wearing person in your group, like, hey, have you ever fit a wheelchair user? Do you have any knowledge of like spinal cord injuries or, you know, limb differences? Like, have you ever worked with someone? Like, I just had a family recently, the dad has stage 4 cancer, and his shoulders were like kind of different heights from just like
Oh,
some of
wow.
the chronic
Yeah.
like things that have been happening with like chemo and radiation. And we talked about kind of making like a foam orthopedic insert to go under the strap of the tula so that it wouldn't be slanted, so that,
That's such a good idea.
yeah, right. But
Yeah.
that's all OT school like coming
Yeah.
back, So
Yeah.
just like trying to find those resources at the source. Like, and I think sometimes that looks like collaboration, right? Like maybe you don't have a baby wearing educator in your area who knows that, but maybe you have a PT who knows your case and a baby wearing educator, and they can work together and they can
Yeah.
figure out something that makes sense for you from like a gear standpoint and from like a physical standpoint. So I think like that like total like collaborative care team model can be really powerful in the instance of like parents who have, like medically complex needs or kids who have medically complex needs. Sometimes that like full care team approach is the way to go. And I think healthcare workers being open to inviting baby wearing educators to the table is really important because, I do feel like sometimes baby wearing educators are dismissed as being like just baby wearing educators because they didn't go to like college for it, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
certification.
I totally get that. I wish
Yeah.
that more healthcare like viewpoints was a more
Yeah.
collaborative one
Yeah.
because
I agree.
um one single provider is not going to know
Right.
everything, and
We
I
have a
think
scope of
having
practice for a reason.
exactly. Exactly. So, like, having that collaboration model is just a really great way to make sure that your client, your patient, is
Yeah.
getting the best care that is holistic for them, like, that's best for
Yeah.
them. What's one myth about baby wearing that you'd love to bust for good?
Buccal carriers are the easiest. That's been my like latest soapbox. I hate like people assume because a buckle carrier looks easy that they don't need to read the instructions, they don't need to do any adjustments, they're not going to need help with it. They can just throw it on and go and it's going to be fine. And honestly, because of that mindset, I think buckle carriers have become one of the like notoriously like the worst ones for bad fit and bad adjustments because
Yeah.
like I don't want to say like it's good that people are wary of like a wrap or a sling, but
Mhm.
they look at that and they go, that looks
Yeah.
difficult. And they respect that. And they like
Yeah.
look up tutorials and they ask for help and they learn and they get like a nice fit that way versus buckle carriers. People are like,
Mhm.
it's just some buckles and some straps and they throw it
It's just
on
a
and it looks
backpack.
it looks so scary.
Figuring out how to make sure that it was on properly. Oh my gosh, it was a
Yeah.
game changer.
It's
It
night and
did
day.
it at every theme park for
Yeah.
Disney.
Yeah.
I swear it was better than a stroller. Like, really,
Yep.
honestly, we had the
Oh my
stroller
gosh.
just to carry our
Yes.
stuff. Like,
The amount of times I've taken my son to the zoo and I'm the only one carrying a kid, and I'm like, "You have to get them in and out of the stroller like
every
1,000
single time.
times," and,
Yeah.
like, I'm just here, my kid's high up on my back, he's, like, looking at the giraffes face to face, like, we're
I
having a
know.
great time, So
Exactly, exactly. It's the best. And then once you learn the bag carrier, I feel like
yeah,
literally that is a
that
game
opens up a
changer
whole
move.
world. Yeah, bag
Yes.
carrying, like, opens up
Yeah.
people are like, "Well, how do you do dishes? How do you get anything done with baby wearing?" I'm like, "You put them on your back, and then you can do, like,
I'm like,
not
how do you get
everything, but,
anything done
like,
if you don't put them on
feels
your
like you can
back?
do
Like, I mean,
everything." Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like it helps the grabby hands that really should not be grabbing things at
Yeah,
all.
yeah, until they go through the hair pulling phase,
Yeah,
but
there is that too. There is that too. So, our last question, I asked this for
yeah,
everybody. If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing about breastfeeding, what would it be?
yeah, that it's okay if it doesn't look like you thought it would. I remember, like, in the NICU, my son was on the CPAP, and we had to start out giving him donor milk, and I didn't get golden hour. My milk didn't come in for like way longer than I thought it would. I was devastated. And I remember like sobbing and being like, someone else's milk is nourishing him. And that is so wonderful. But also, like, I thought it would be mine, and just being like devastated that we had to combo feed. And then we went on and we breastfed exclusively for 2 years. And it was
I love that.
incredible. But, like,
Yeah.
if I was so focused on it being, like, beautiful from the beginning, and it
Yeah.
was still beautiful, you know, it just
Yeah.
took a little bit longer than we thought. So I think, like, just being open to it being different than you thought it was gonna be and being willing to get help
Yeah.
when, things feel hard. I remember being like, "I'll be weaned by this state. We'll be weaned by this state. We'll be weaned," and then, like, if you had told me when I was pregnant that I would have a 2-year-old that was still feeding to sleep every night, I would have been like, "No," but then we did, and you know what? When we finally weaned, I, like, told him, like, "Okay, I'm going out of town tomorrow, like, this is it." There were no tears, there was no asking for it when I got back because we were both ready, because we just let it happen on our own time instead of, like, trying to, like, fit into a box, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
I
was
love that.
incredible.
I did the same thing. I swore when I was pregnant that I was like, because I was a nurse and I was like, I know the importance of breast milk, so
Yeah.
I'll breastfeed until he gets teeth. Like, I don't want to get
Yeah,
bit. Like,
I
I'm
was
not
like,
going to do that.
15 months, we'll get through cold and flu season after
Yeah.
he turns 1, and then we'll be done.
Yeah.
And at 15 months, he was boob obsessed still. There was
Yes.
if
Yes.
I had weaned him, it would have been an emotional nightmare for both of us,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. We ended
you
up
know?
weaning at like 2.5 when I got pregnant with my
Yeah,
daughter. And
yeah,
I would have gone longer, to be honest, but
yeah,
I was done being pregnant and trying to nurse at the same time. And so
yeah.
I was like,
I don't blame
nope,
you. Oh my
I am
gosh.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were down to literally, we had been down to 1 5 to 10-minute feed at bedtime once a day for 3 months, and I was like, "I'm going out of town and, like, you're 2 and you're ready, like, we've been doing this, like,
Yeah.
feed to sleep for a few minutes, and that's it, like, it's
Yeah.
time," you know?
Yeah,
So
that's
and
really,
it
and it's a
was.
beautiful way to do that too. We will make sure that for anybody that's watching, that you have all of Jordan's information in the
Yeah.
captions, and any of the resources that she shared will also have in the caption for you. Jordan, thank you so much for being here and chatting with us.